Welcome to the Subjective Professor podcast, where we reject coercion and hypocrisy. This is episode 178, and we're going to talk about revenge or justice. And I know some people believe that they're the same thing, but no, they're not actually the same thing. Uh, so this will probably be at least for the time being, while school is in session, my normal upload time, right? So I get back from school, put together an episode, and then record and upload. I'm not as polished as most other podcasters. I just basically sit down, tap out some ideas, record, and then without any editing at all, I just upload it. Okay. I probably should edit it in some way, but I don't even know what to do and how to do that, whatever. So here we go. So a little bit later in the day, perhaps it'll be so late in the day that you'll just wait for the next day to listen. But anyway, so it seems, at least in my lifetime of nearly 60 years, that the US has been bred on revenge and retribution. Okay. So revenge is to, and I've got these official definitions from dictionary.com, but revenge is to exact punishment for a wrong, especially in a resentful or vindictive spirit. So retribution would be retaliation for a wrong or injury, repayment or return, the payback for a service, right? So payback according to merit, especially for evil. Now, one thing that we have to keep in mind when it comes to these terms is that what exactly is a wrong, right? So that's subjective in the same way that good is subjective. So therefore, what is bad, what is wrong, what is evil also is a subjective concept, right? Depending on who you are and how you're looking at these things, it can be good or it can be bad. Now, most people, once you explain really what's going on, most people may agree that something is one way or the other. But obviously, there is still a portion of society who would see things differently. Nevertheless, as long as you, let's just say you're the person who wants revenge, you're the person who wants retribution, right? So it's these two concepts that are on one side of the equation here. So you want to pay back what you perceive as evil on someone else. And so you're going to do it in a very vindictive, very emotional kind of way, a negative emotion, right? So when you exact revenge or when you seek retribution, when you try to pay back someone back for evil by doing even greater evil on that person, you have a mindset of how dare you, right? How dare you mess with me? So I'm not just going to pay you back what you gave me, right? So you broke my finger, I'm going to break your finger. No, it's that interesting thing in Untouchables. Sean Connery had this line. I don't remember all of it, but part of it goes, they send one of yours to the hospital, you send one of theirs to the morgue, right? And so it's not just that you're paying them back. You pay them back with interest, extra with extra pain, right? So over and above what they gave you. So to punish beyond what was received. And so this is sort of the FAFO kind of thing. You screw around and you find out kind of situation, right? Don't mess with me, but you mess with me. So now I'm going to make you pay far more than what you gave me. But this kind of attitude of revenge, is it good for society? Now, if you're the person who wants revenge, you're going to be like, hey, I'm going to do this. But as a phenomena, is this what is good for society? Because you see, if you don't completely annihilate that person, then they're going to pay you back as well. They're going to seek retribution against you. So it's this continued escalation um, pattern, right? So family feuds were basically carried out because of this, right? So you killed one of me, my family, I'm going to kill one of your family, right? So the Hatfields and the McCoys, this kind of family feud kind of situation. Now, a lot of people will confuse this retribution, revenge as being justice, but it's not really justice. I explained this continued escalation phenomena politically in the recent episodes, where one political party is perceived to be doing this. Oh, they wronged us, especially if you look and listen and know or familiar with the recent political history over the last 20 years or so, then you can see that one political party does certain things which triggers a response from the other major political party here in the United States, which then pushes the swinging pendulum further in the other direction, which then means that the reaction will be even greater the next time around. And so, politically speaking, you can kind of see this ever escalating um, level of, you know, desire for retribution to the point now where, the Democrats and the Republicans, it's kind of hard. No one even remembers who, started it, this back and forth between the two political parties. But now it seems like it's getting out of hand. Now, in contrast to revenge and retribution, we have justice or restitution. As I just said, a lot of people believe that revenge is justice. No, this is not right, right? Because it's far more. You exceed the harm that you received, that's what you pay back, far more than what you received. So, in contrast to that is justice or restitution. Okay. So, justice is the quality of being just, equitableness, righteousness, rightfulness, or lawfulness. And to put it very simply, to be fair. So, fair for everyone involved, a term that is used as the opposite of uh, retribution is restitution. Now, restitution is reparation. I know that word now has baggage, but reparation is to make amends for wrong or injury made by giving an equivalent or compensation for loss, right? So you're going to make amends by uh, figuring out what the loss was, what the damage was, what the pain, the suffering was, and then you try to, um, you know, make amends by giving some kind of, usually it's money, monetary award to the people who were wronged. This is compensation for loss, damage, or injury, right? So you can see that it's different, right? So revenge is not the same as justice, right? Because you're going to pay back more. Justice is trying to figure out what would be equal, what would be fair. And instead of having retribution, you're going to have restitution. You're going to try to restore or repay for the damage, pay for the damages that you caused. So remember, in the same way that revenge and retribution, the perception of wrong is subjective, so then the perception of what is fair is subjective as well. So all of these things, depending on your subjectivity, your perspective, is going to vary at least a little bit. And so that determination of what is fair has to happen with a third party, right? So a third person, right? If two people are fighting and they're arguing and one wants revenge, the other saying, hey, why don't we just pursue restitution, because revenge can get really ugly and a never-ending cycle of violence. So how about if we pursue restitution? And so this sounds good to the other person. And then they say, who are we going to bring in to resolve our conflict? And for another episode, perhaps we can get into arbitration, private arbitration, right, or private court system, which apparently already exists. Just the average person doesn't know anything about it. So, what is fair? So, once you bring in an outside observer, a third party court system, right, then you get to try to figure out what is fair and to whom. One question that we can bring up, one question that we can turn over in our heads is asking the question, is there a victim? Was there someone who suffered damage or not? And so you may be, if you're listening to this episode, then you're probably familiar with the phenomena of victimless crimes, crimes, quote unquote, crimes which have no victim. So, like smoking marijuana, for example, right? Who's the victim? If it was my choice, and I know marijuana is not really a big deal. Well, cocaine, right? Let's do cocaine. I think that's still pretty much uh, street illegal. So let's just say I'm taking, inhaling, whatever you do with cocaine. I don't know, obviously, clearly, I've never done it. So I'm inhaling cocaine, but it was my choice. It wasn't forced on me. I'm not undercover as a policeman, you know. So who's the victim there? If there is no victim, then why is it a crime? And we can get into a conversation where, oh, the victim is the state, it's the government. The person who is breaking the so-called law, that person is sort of ignoring or how shall I say, so is sort of disparaging, looking down on uh, the state, and the state is insulted. How dare you not respect me? How dare you not obey my laws? And so that's why that person goes to prison. So the victim there would be the state, and since they have monopoly on the justice system and uh, on police, you're going to jail, right? Which is why censorship is so problematic. What we see in England is such a serious problem, right? If you insult the state, well, so what? That's should be permissible, right? That should be part of life in a free society. But no, you can't insult or speak poorly of the people who are in power. And so the true victim in victimless crimes is the state. And so that would be interesting for us to keep in mind. Here's another situation. In other words, who is it fair to, right? So we talked about fair. So how do we figure out fair? Well, in the victimless crime situation, the government is the one who determines what's fair. And so since it's a slight against them, they feel insulted. They're going to protect their honor by arresting the people who are committing victimless crimes. So another situation is there was a father, and this is in New York somewhere, in New York City somewhere, but a father forgot that he had twins in his car, right? So he was supposed to drop them off to the daycare, forgot for some reason, and drove to work, worked for 8 hours, came back, and they died of, they died because it was so hot in the car. It must have been summer or something like that. And so the temperatures in a closed car on a summer day can get pretty ridiculous. And so apparently when they died, their temperature was 108. And I think I heard somewhere that that's when basically, things start coming apart in the human body. And so the twins, both of them died in the back seat of their father's car. Now, when that happened, right, and so the father was not a deadbeat. I mean, he was a social worker. He worked he worked counseling disabled veterans. So he was a person of responsibility. But when that story broke, a lot of people, including my wife, wanted blood. They were like, this guy is so stupid. He should be in jail. And I said, But hold on, he has three other children. If he goes to jail, what happens to his family? What happens to his other three kids who were apparently a lot older, right? So now all of a sudden they don't have a breadwinner in the family. Now all of a sudden their financial situation is thrown out of whack, right? Now they don't have a place to live. I mean, how do they, continue, doing and living the life that they were before if their father is in prison, who I'm guessing, considering there were all these kids, that he was the main breadwinner in that family. So I was like, so who's the victim? Who are you actually punishing? And who would be punished, right? So if you were to lock up the father or even execute him, whatever, who are you punishing? Right? You're punishing his other three kids. You're punishing his wife, right? They're the ones who are going to suffer a lot. And then if you do throw them in prison, who's going to pay for all of that? The incarceration, which is something on the order of over, $50,000 a year, right? Who's going to pay for that? And that would be all of the people screaming for blood. And so I said, if you look at it frankly, soberly, it's the father who has to suffer now for the rest of his life. And this is assuming a normal person, right? That this person, obviously negligent, but maybe was too tired. Maybe the kids kept him up all night and he just forgot that the twins were in the back seat. And so now he has to live for the rest of his life as the father who forgot his kids in the back seat, and they, you know, I guess exposure is what they died of, right? So they died just because the car was way too hot. He's got to live with that for the rest of his life. That's his punishment, right? That is pretty much his punishment. So think of it this way, right? And it took a while for my wife to even listen to what I had to say. But if I accidentally kill someone, and basically in school, I used to just do this thought experiment. And sometimes I would pick out a random student in the class, and I didn't know a lot of them. So I just would, pick whoever was sitting in the front seat. And I said, okay, let's just say I'll call him Bob. I don't know what his name was, but let's say Bob's dad. He was behind me. I didn't see him and I ran him over. Like, let's just say he fell asleep behind my car and I ran over him and now he's dead. So I accidentally killed him, right? Uh, so what would be justice in that situation, right? Sending me to jail would mean not only is one family now in hardship, now you have two families in hardship, right? Assuming that the father who I killed accidentally was the main breadwinner of that family. So now they're in hardship. And then if you throw me in prison, then my family's in hardship now too, right? And so how is that good for society? How did carrying out that revenge, that retribution, how did that work out in society? Not very well. The same questions come up as well. Who is the victim? Who would be punished? Who would have to pay? And all of these answers just simply add the cost of living. It decreases the standard of living for that society. And so, what perhaps a better penalty for me after accidentally killing that person is that now I have to take care of the other family for as long as it takes, right? So, not only then do I have to take care of my family, but I have to work extra hard because now I'm taking care of another family. So, the things aren't perfect, things aren't great, but it would be better than me going to prison, right? And so I would work a lot harder. Make no mistake, the lives of the two families would be completely different, right? I'm not talking about that though. I'm talking about how to have a fair, just resolution to this situation. One year I picked a random student and it turned out that his father did die on the operating table several years before. And I was mortified. I was like, I couldn't have known, but we talked a lot, and he said they sued the doctor, but they settled the settled amount they burned through in a year because his mom was unhealthy too. And so she had all these medical bills, and they burned through all of the cash that they had able to secure through the settlement. And so he said, that's why I can't buy into this restitution idea, because I should have gotten more. And so I said, something that you have to realize is that when you have settlements like that, the amounts are dictated by law as well. So it's not necessarily the judge did you dirty, but it might be that the laws are just not accommodative of specific situations. Okay. So wouldn't it have been awesome if the doctor then was required to pick up a lot of the expenses for that family now that he, uh, you know, killed that family's main breadwinner on the operating table. He was a surgeon, right? So basically, the laws aren't really um, setting prices in the way that they should, and they shouldn't at all. So, big picture then, the United States seems to want to push this retribution narrative, right? I mean, I grew up on revenge movies, right? The one that's one of the first that I ever saw was Cowboys with John Wayne, right? I was a little kid when I saw that, and it was like, yeah, pay them back with extra, that mentality, that bloodthirsty mentality is something that is, fostered here in the United States, it seems, with the attitude that it's immoral if you don't make them pay. So why is it that, that this narrative, this attitude of retribution is pumped so hard here in the United States? Maybe to justify war, right? If enough of the population sees retribution as a legitimate way of resolving harm and wrong, then you're going to have more wars. Maybe that's what's going on. And then if you have this attitude, then even if a situation has nothing to do with you, right? It does not touch you or relate to you in any way. Well, you can say, well, but you got to do something. You can't let those evil people do all that stuff to that innocent group of people over there. And so then you have this over punishing kind of mentality. Is it to keep the hate going? I don't know. This is just simply speculation on my part. But clearly, I don't think that necessarily the intent of making all those movies was to create this kind of attitude, but it wasn't discouraged, right? And a lot of people realize that they can make money by making movies, entertainment pieces this way. Now, with all of the censorship on social media, the hate narrative is preferred. And the de-escalation narrative, the let's show some more perspective, let's show some more information, that it's not really as easy to decide who's right and who's wrong, right? You're going to censor that, right? You're going to cancel that. And so then all you're left with is the hate narrative. And, just to wrap things up, how do we resolve this? I mean, do we have to have re-education camps and all the other kind of stuff that people on the left want? No, no. All you have to do is end the Fed. All you have to do is discontinue the easy money policy, and a lot of this will go away. The true cost of revenge will be seen, and people will realize that when it comes to like who is harmed, who is the victim, who's going to be punished if you carry out this revenge, who would pay for it if you carried out this revenge. It would be a lot clearer. And then people would realize that if they pursue the revenge narrative, that you will not get anywhere near justice. So something to think about, that if there was more information, more free exchange of information, it'd be a lot harder to carry out the retribution revenge narrative. And it would just mostly just remain in the field of entertainment. So that's it for today. I will talk to you tomorrow.